Chapter 6, Returning to the Sanctuary That Sanctified Fear. We learn to tremble long before we learn to hope. The thoughts from my youth. There was never any doubt about the culture we were stepping back into after leaving Florida. But even now, it stuns me to remember just how fear was weaponized to demand absolute loyalty and obedience. It wasn't just threats of missing the rapture or being cast into eternal fire. Evangelists and self-appointed prophets would sweep through, preaching revivals that stretched on for weeks. They left our minds crawling with nightmares that could put any Hollywood horror film to shame. One preacher in particular still haunts me. They called him a modern-day Old Testament prophet, and he wore that title like a badge of honor. His voice, a deep, slow Texas drawl, wrapped around you for 2 relentless hours, painting graphic, grotesque portraits of what would happen to anyone who dared ignore the warnings. It felt as if the preacher's rage burned hotter than God's, demanding we tremble at his words even more than at God's wrath. One particularly vivid depiction still clings to my memory. He told of an unrepentant man who walked out of a service, shrugging off the warnings in the sermon. Later that evening, while taking a bath, the preacher claimed the man's legs began to disintegrate into a bloody mess, a punishment for his disobedient heart. This grotesque illustration wasn't just a story, it was a threat, a warning to never, ever question what he declared to be God's prophetic word. And for me, the association to my father's recent death was immediate and crushing. In my mind, my dad wasn't just gone, he was being punished, burning in a lake of fire. I imagined that in his final moments, he hadn't found a merciful God waiting with grace, but had instead faced the excruciating consequences of his addiction. It was in this culture, this climate of terror, that my faith was hardwired. And not for love or hope, but for a God who in my heart wasn't waiting to show me compassion, but waiting for the chance to unleash his wrath. That anchor of fear manifested again at the North American Youth Congress, a massive national gathering for young people across the organization. 3 nights of emotional hype, indoctrination, and forced repentance, all dressed up in the finest clothes your family could afford. There were skits, dramas, visual sermons that told us exactly how we were to view God and how he viewed us. One particular skit still burns in my memory, a young man struggling with temptation. He falls, makes a mistake, and the final scene was Jesus being nailed to the cross again, as a song by Ray Boltz played in the background. A song titled Feel the Nails. It seems that I'm so good at breaking promises, and I treat his precious grace so carelessly. But each time he forgives, what if he relives the agony he felt on that tree? Does he still feel the nails every time I fail? Does he hear the crowd cry, "Crucify," again? Am I causing him pain? Then I know I've got to change, because I just can't bear the thought of hurting him. Skits like this didn't just move us, they broke us. They cemented a belief that forgiveness wasn't real, that mercy was a fantasy, that every mistake I made, every sin, every stumble, was another nail I drove through Christ's hands. In my heart, I wasn't just a sinner. I was a spiritual bastard, unclaimed, unloved, without a father willing to save me. Not only was my God filled with wrath, he was also filled with disappointment. And the message was constantly reinforced, not just through sermons or skits, but through consequences. If you were caught going to the movies, you were publicly humiliated, removed from all youth group activities. If it was revealed you'd fallen into sexual temptation, you were branded, promiscuous, perverted, and again, cast out. If you were a girl who cut your hair, wore jewelry, wore pants to school, you were told you had to rebuild your testimony, and even then, you were forever held under suspicion. Nothing brings fear to a teenager like the threat of being excluded, shunned by the only community that's ever felt like family. And I wasn't about to lose that. Add to that, I longed desperately for a father figure, especially in the senior pastor. To many, his grandfatherly Southern demeanor was soothing, but I had seen too many crushed under his punishments, too many stories of discipline, exclusion, silence. It was clear to me, my main objective was to stay out of the path of his wrath. So I towed the line, got as close as I could without crossing it, looked obedient, sounded obedient, and buried any sign of struggle, any sign of weakness. That's when I became a master of playing the game.